Don't touch my nipples without asking.
This definitely isn't Soviet Russia.
Hey, welcome to Mount Rushmore, where each episode we swap out the faces of an enormous portrait of our nationalist heroes, Lenin, Marx, Tolstoy, and Boris and Natasha. And I'm joined, as always, by my friends Richard.
Hello.
And Michael.
Da.
And this episode's subject, which you may have guessed just from hearing Michael's affirmative in the Russian language. This episode is the Mount Rushmore of movies, TV shows, songs, and pop culture that depict a ridiculously naive and dated fear of Soviet Russia.
That's gonna be hard to get into Twitter. By the way,
Just put it in like a Russian Cyrillic.
That's right.
does it not count then?
It's one character.
It's one character. This was my choice. And now I'm just trying to think why it is my choice. I guess because
we're currently living in a fear of Russia taking over the United States. Oh no, wait, that happened.
That is so actually very, very current right now. But I grew up during the Cold War, and a lot of the entertainment that was popular at that time, whenever you wanted to depict a big problem, it was whatever was happening behind the Iron Curtain, or whatever menace was coming from a foreign entity. And I grew up during the kind of the arms race and this idea that at any point we could just blow each other off the planet with our weapons of mass destruction that were actually real and not imagined. So I was always impressed by the drama and melodrama in a lot of the entertainment. It could be music, it could be movies, it could be cartoons, it could be anything. And in hindsight, some of that is viewed as melodramatic, and some of it might even be viewed as extreme, but it was all very real for us in that time. But it's kind of fun to look back and to examine that entertainment and judge the heck out of it. So I chose the category, but I'm going to ask Richard to go first.
Sure. And my first one is Ivan Drago from Rocky IV.
Okay. Also on my list.
Yeah, I figured this would be a joint pick. Yeah. It's pretty much the...
He was the culmination of Russian fear and strength and embodiment of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was this terrifying force in the movie, and I think he has like eight lines.
Do you mean the Siberian Express, Ivan Drago?
Yes.
Do you mean the Siberian Bull, Ivan Drago?
Yes. I believe his...
Death from Above, Ivan Drago.
Death from Above, yes. A amateur record of 100 wins and one loss.
I love that. I love that they had to get to 100. He had to murder probably 100 lesser beings before he faced Rocky.
So right, but in amateur fights though.
Rocky fought a lot of American foes, but I love that by the time he got to that movie that he had to go outside of the United States in order to find another foe. No, but he Drago kills Apollo.
He fought 100 tomato cans before he got to Rocky, but it was the USSR, so it was literally
tomato cans.
It was a tomato can, but it was one that he just fought over and over.
And he had to wait in line 6 months to get that tomato can.
Why did you pick Ivan Drago?
Because as Michael said, so much of the I think partially because so much of the Cold War wound up playing out in sports.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the Miracle on Ice. You know, you have all these events where every Olympics for a long time, it was the U.S. versus the Soviet Union. And we boycotted them in 80 and they boycotted us in 84. And so it really was this level of competitive dick swinging.
Well, it's funny.
Especially in the female sports. Hey-yo, that should be the East Germans, though. Hey-yo.
It's funny how if you can't fight a war, you're going to settle it on the wrestling mat. Or you're going to settle it in some sort of sports to show your dominance. And I think with Russia, especially when like steroids were in accusations of doping came out around in the early 80s as well, Ivan Drago ended up being this abnormal creature. It couldn't just be that he was this peak physical specimen. He was also doing something bad.
They show him. They show him needles
doing
put in stuff put in him. Yeah. You don't know what it is, but it's implied. He's
you,
not getting a flu shot. Please, do not give me flu shot. I have sensitive skin.
The Cold War, as kind of initiated via science by like Sputnik going up in orbit, it almost feels like science is the way that we also were intimidated by the Soviet Union. We were told at some points that they had superior things like rockets or ships, and the idea that they could engineer a chemically and physically superior boxer through Drago. Almost feel like what that franchise needed, because Rocky had already beat up everybody. Like,
Right,
if he
in the
could,
US.
He could beat up any normal human, right?
So the next step up, if it wasn't for Ivan Drago, I think he would have fought like Godzilla
Rock'em
Godzilla.
Sock'em Robots.
or something. Yeah.
Real Steel would have happened a lot sooner.
I think there's an element of that where it's just Drago is portrayed as not as a person, but as kind of an idealized version of the Soviet state.
Yeah, he is as chiseled as a statue of Lenin.
Lenin, by the way, pretty good boxer in his day. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, like,
Had a right sickle.
Dolph Lundgren is kind of actually that person. He's like he's a brilliant mind. He's not only this 6'4" like Adonis like creature, but he's
Fulbright
also
scholar in biochemistry.
he's like a genius as well, and that should be actually more frightening than
Would a genius hook up with Grace Jones?
well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think then the way they tell the story is that it's the battle of American individualism in Rocky, somebody who built himself up from nothing to become Rocky Balboa, versus someone who is almost literally
byproduct of the state,
just made in a test tube almost.
Yeah.
And that's when you get the montage scene where Rocky's out there by himself in the, and we've talked about this on the montage episode.
Hearts of Fire.
Yeah.
Hearts on Fire.
Yeah. Where you've just got him, deadlifting Polly and running through the mountains, and you've got Drago with all this high-tech equipment. And that's, to your point, like that technology thing. It's sort of the idea of you may have the technology, you may be using kind of unfair means, sort of like in the space race where they didn't care if 80 of them, astronauts, cosmonauts died. As long as they got somebody up there first, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So it's like they will use any means necessary, but will still prevail because of our, rugged American exceptionalism, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, there's two things. One, it's funny how the roles obviously change within the movie, because by the end of the movie, all of the Russian premier and the entire crowd is suddenly on Rocky's side because has so much spirit and he won't give up. But then Drago also changes.
Yeah, he tells the handler to fuck off, basically.
Yeah, and he's like, I fight for me. I'm not fighting for you. I fight because I want to win.
Yeah.
And so he, who's the evil one, takes on that persona of like the individual rather than someone that's fighting for the state.
Uh-huh.
But then the other thing I wanted to say real quick was, it's funny to see commercials now, and you see American athletes using technology hooked up to these breathing machines, running on treadmills with all of the fancy technology. It's funny to see how that is something that is so welcome now.
Is this Dorito technology? Because I saw that commercial.
That's what I run on.
Can we make him cool ranchier than he was before?
The $6 million chips.
Sure, Tom Brady can throw a football. But what if he was cool ranchier?
Oh, that's the best.
But now technology's embraced.
We've embraced we've embraced being like, well, sure, of course we're going to use science. We defeated the Ruskies, and now this is it's not just running up hills with a log on your back.
Yeah, and there's a whole backstory about what happens after the movie that I think Drago winds up coming back to the U.S. and becoming like a 2-time world champion after like Rocky retires, and they wind up becoming like friends. He moves to the U.S.
Is this your fan fiction, or is this in another?
And then they gaze longingly into each other's eyes.
No.
Shipping Balboa and Drago.
Shipping Balboa. But I did think it was interesting that like he didn't make an appearance in any of the Rocky Balboa movie or anything after that, even though in some, I guess it's like the Star Wars universe, I guess there's an official Rocky universe.
Oh, of course.
Where he's like, he has this whole backstory, and they call back to Creed so many times, but they didn't call back to like him or Clubber Lang.
The Kevin J. Anderson edited Tales from Rocky's Gym isn't that popular.
No.
In Creed, Creed was such a change of genre from the other Rocky films. Creed was like a drama, and the Rocky films are boxing pictures.
After the first one especially.
But Creed definitely, the title character holds Balboa accountable for his father's death. That movie it was like death in a cartoon. Yeah, this was
Just throw the damn towel. Yeah, that one.
that's funny. Okay, so
By the way, you know who I hold responsible for his death? James Brown.
James Brown, right? His boastful "Living in America" performance.
Yeah, that wild drug turned him into a wild man.
Yeah. He's going station to station. All right, Michael, what's your choice?
My next one is Yakov Smirnoff.
Oh, right on.
Stand-up comedian, permanent resident of Branson, Missouri
Branson,
nowadays.
Missouri.
He was the way that you could feel okay about being scared of Russia.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Because he came over in the mid-'80s. He started out playing, I guess, kind of related to you, Jeff. You didn't start out this way, but you've done cruises.
Oh, yeah.
He was doing cruises in the Black Sea, and eventually worked his way over from the Ukraine to, America, and started, becoming a very. I don't know if he was a very popular, but he was definitely a singularly identifiable comic.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Especially with like his two big jokes were the "What a Country" jokes and then the Russian reversal jokes.
Yeah.
And
Which are still used to this day by people. I mean, that's a sign that your bit, I guess, worked, or at least was broad enough that it could hit. You don't have people do bits like that anymore.
No, and certainly he doesn't do them as much anymore. In an interview after basically the Soviet Union collapsed, there was like a late night with David Letterman top 10 list, and the number one reason why of things that are going to happen after the Soviet Union collapse was like Yakov Smirnoff is out of a job. And he kind of realized that, like, all of his bookings dried up.
Oh, wow.
And after that, he changed his stand-up from "What a Country" and, in country, in Soviet Russia, in America, you watch Big Brother, and Soviet Russia, Big Brother watches you. That sort of stuff turned into, like, as he calls it, it's part of his bit. He's like, the real Cold War is happening in the home between, like, husbands and wives. So, like, he shifted his entire career
One hacky bit to another.
into, like, just marriage jokes. And he's been doing it from like 92 to like 2015 in his own theater in Branson, Missouri, which, have either of you guys been there?
I have not.
Oh,
That was awkward.
that was great.
He's received a master's degree in positive psychology, whatever that is,
Yeah,
from the University of Pennsylvania.
It's making people laugh from the clown college.
Nadia Comaneci emigrated in 1989 to the U.S. She hasn't got any good jokes. What an idiot.
when the last button I'll put on this is that he eventually became a U.S. citizen and has spent, like, ever since like 9/11 or maybe even before that, he spent like the last 15 years like painting patriotic paintings.
That's crazy.
Paintings of like the Statue of Liberty and how great it is. I mean, he made his money here and continues to, and he's an American citizen, so he has every right. But it's great to see someone who actually does enjoy this country for a change.
Yeah. All right, Richard, what's your next choice?
My next choice is, broadly speaking, wrestlers from the Soviet Union in the 1970s and 80s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just a whole schmear of wrestlers.
Yeah, I will specifically, for the sake of the Rushmore, I will specifically say Nikolai Volkov.
Sure.
From WWF in the 80s, but we could be Ivan Koloff. We could be Nikita Koloff. We could be Ivan the Crusher. There's so many of these. And
How
they're
many
all the
were
same.
real? How many were real?
Let's see. I know Nikolai Volkov was like from Yugoslavia and then came over. I know that Nikita Koloff, who was a big NWA, fought against like Dusty Rhodes and those guys. Yeah, he was from New Jersey. His real name's like Scott Peterson or something like that.
Wait, isn't that a murderer?
It's not Scott Peterson.
Okay.
It's like Scott Smith, or I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So it's like 50-50, I think. Probably. And even the ones who aren't born in America, it's usually usually wasn't actually Russia. It was some Eastern European country, or again, Ivan Drago, played by a Swede.
Yeah.
Dolph Lundgren.
Great way to get instant heat is just to be from Russia. Boo! Hate that. Why? I don't know. He's from Russia. Boo.
Yeah, so... Yes.
I'm from Leningrad, Mexico.
Boo! Two things we don't understand.
Boo? Boo? So, it's funny you mentioned that. I'll just to sidetrack for a second, Nikita Koloff was like one of the big bad guys in the 1980s in NWA/WCW. They actually turned him into a fan favorite because one of the wrestlers he was having a big feud with wound up legitimately getting in a car accident that ended his career. And so they used that as the impetus to have him say, I respected him so much that someone tried to attack him at some point and he ran in to save him. And so they flipped him into a good guy. Nobody gave a shit about him really after that. Killed the character.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love specifically Nikolai Volkov because he had the most incredible heat generating machine for a wrestler ever, which is, I mean, we may have talked about this in the Heel Moves episode. He would make them stop after he did his entrance and play the Soviet national anthem, and he would sing along with it.
Oh, wow.
And it was just
instant.
People were booing who I'm sure knew it was fake.
Mm-hmm.
That's out of the instinct.
Yeah.
Of that's bad. I think I need to boo that.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a very nice pick. I love that it still continues today with like Rusev.
Yeah.
Who, Jeff, there's a wrestler that's wrestling today who's, I think he's
Bulgarian.
He's Bulgarian, but at some point he declared his affection for Vladimir Putin and Russia.
Okay.
And he started running around the ring with this giant Russian flag and saluting Russia and saluting Putin.
Wow.
And came to WrestleMania riding a tank.
He was riding this giant tank. And like, I like the idea that all you need to do is still just be from Russia and you can just be pegged. It's just easily peggable as a bad guy.
Yeah, like Trump. Easily. I'm sorry, President Trump. If he hasn't been impeached by the time this one comes out, we'll have to re-edit that if it happens.
It's been 2.5 days, and so
who knows?
What's the over under 6?
Yeah. So it was also funny to me to see like remember the Rock and Wrestling
sure
cartoon, and he was on there, but he was like this bumbling like kind of version of himself. You know, kind of the stereotypical Russian. I don't understand what this thing is.
Well, you just team him up with. Who's
Iron Sheik?
Iron Sheik.
Yeah, they were tag team champions for a long
foreigner.
time. Which, it's like, well, we've got a Soviet guy. We've got an Iranian guy. What do they have in common?
Nailed it.
They both hate America.
Yeah.
I got an idea.
The Antarctic wrestler didn't catch on very much.
You know what's funny is in entertainment, there were so many Russian villains. And in real life, I have only encountered them as the people who are smoking in the DMV.
Okay, so in Glendale, your former hometown, there's a pool hall there, and you go in the front, there's just pool tables. In the back, they've got the actual billiards, which is different. It's got like the bigger tables and all that stuff, and it's just it's smoke-filled, bunch of Russians. Yeah. I went back there to play one time, and I really felt like I was walking in on some sort of like deal.
Yeah,
it was happening, and they really wanted me to leave.
Yeah. Well, all right, we are at the halftime, and this is the moment where I implore you to go to the Mount Rushmore Podcast website and check that out, and then go to our Mount Rushmore Podcast Facebook page and get in the dialogue. There are a lot of places there where people are having discussions about the subjects we discuss on this podcast, and a lot of places where you can enter in your opinions about our choices or about topics that you'd like to hear discussed in the future. And then, of course, there's our Instagram and our Twitter that we would enjoy if you would follow. But hey, if I could ask you to do one thing, it would be go to the iTunes page for Mount Rushmore Podcast, download, rate, and review.
In Soviet Union, iTunes reviews you.
Thank you.
The Russian seal.
The Russian seal. God, that was amazing. So, please do us the solid of going down there, checking out old episodes, current episodes, and then just, give us the 1 to 5 stars, whatever you think about it. Please be honest. And then...
not that honest.
Yeah, not that fucking honest. And then review if you would. We'd legitimately love to see your feedback on it. And I think it would help other people find the podcast and see if it's right for them.
My next choice is the Worker and Parasite cartoon from The Simpsons, from the episode Krusty Gets Canceled. It is
fantastic.
It is a 15, 20-second cartoon. The story is that there is a new thing coming into town called Gabbo, and no one knows what it is, and Gabbo is coming. And you find out that it's a ventriloquist and his dummy named Gabbo. And it's apparently a children's show that's coming in, and everyone is, because it's The Simpsons, everyone becomes instantly infatuated in it and is obsessed with it. And that seems to happen quite a bit, where the town just gets collectively stupid. And so Krusty the Clown, who has, a stranglehold on children's entertainment, I guess, and fast food in the town, suddenly finds that his cartoon, Itchy and Scratchy, which is, a cat and mouse takeoff on Tom and Jerry, moves over to the now wildly more popular Gabbo show, and he is stuck with Worker in Parasite, a cartoon out of 1956 Eastern Europe. And I chose this because it's all in all confusing and funny and silly and kind of depressing. Mm-hmm. And I think it helped to play on the fears of how horrible even the entertainment was potentially in Europe, or in the Soviet Union.
It starts with cabbage and it ends with entertainment.
In like the 50s and 60s, and there was, it's a parody on the cartoons that came out of that era, which were kind of strange, but I think they're probably very culturally relevant and reflexive of the life that is actually around. And watching this cartoon, you see like the cat and mouse just jumping around, and in the background are just like people standing in line for food.
Yeah.
They're not making any sense.
For all our flaws in the capitalist sponsor-driven entertainment that we have in the United States, there's no Ministry of Communication that controls the message.
Not yet.
Not yet. We bore ourselves for other reasons, but the fun constructivist art that we see depicted and how it just looks so bizarre. It doesn't look anything like a cat or mouse, really. But yet, perhaps some Russian got an imported bootleg of Tom and Jerry, and that inspired it to begin with. So
I listened to a pretty great podcast a couple of weeks ago.
Wait, better than this?
Yeah, that's your opinion.
Hold on.
Well, let's see.
Hey, guys. I said pretty great.
Okay.
It was called 99% Invisible, and in it they talk about the what happens when music made its way and like technology made its way to Russia, and how a tape recorder would make its way, would somehow get out of the United States and somehow get into the USSR, and someone's job would be to take it apart, figure out how to make it, and put it back together in whatever way they possibly could. And the same happened with cartoons. Basically, entertainment got out of the United States. Not that hard to get it out. It's just harder to get it into the USSR, and then they'd have their own interpretations of it. So I like the idea of this American product of Tom and Jerry, and it turning around and being this really confusing mess and sadness in Soviet Union.
It's very easy to get sucked, by the way, into a YouTube time suck watching clips of Soviet era 70s, 80s variety shows.
Are they confusing
commercials. Too? They're less confusing and more shoddy.
Oh, okay.
It definitely has that SCTV quality to it.
Yeah.
A boom mic comes into the screen and they're just like, that's fine.
Or it's just like all like, it's the 70s, but everything looks like a Lawrence Welk episode. I think of the SCTV skit. Jeff, you watch SCTV a lot.
Yeah.
When John Candy basically did the weightlifter with his own variety show. Yuri.
Hey, Yorgi, he's coming to your town. Hey, Yorgi.
Yeah, that's basically what it really was happening in the Soviet Union.
Last week we talked about the Red Elvises as like this act that came out of the Ukraine, or was it Russia? I can't remember.
It was Ukraine.
It was Ukraine.
Ukraine, your neck, I break it.
And that was an American influenced band that had their own spin on it, and I like the idea of something coming in, getting chopped up, and just the representation of this on The Simpsons, which is very, they're very cognizant of all of that stuff.
I am kicking myself now, by the way, that I did not submit the SCTV episode.
Oh, hey, Yorgi.
Well, no, the whole episode that was supposed to be
taken over from Russia.
Yeah, like Russian television took over the satellite and we're broadcasting like crappy Soviet television. If you get a chance to see it,
I think one of their shows Revenge, and it was like it was a show about revenge.
Or it was like Candid Camera, but it was like a Soviet version
Yeah.
of it. And like you went to jail at the end of it, if I remember correctly.
Crime and Punishment. Okay, Richard, what's your next choice?
That's a good question.
Okay, I'll ask it again. Richard, what's your next choice?
Now use the nails. You say you're gonna use it with a. Ask them the same question, but with pliers.
Okay.
My next-
What's your next choice?
Don't touch my nipples without asking.
Oh.
This definitely isn't Soviet Russia.
My next choice is the song "Russians" by Sting.
Ah, okay.
Otherwise,
I gotta say that was the vibe that was hitting me when I chose this.
was it?
Yeah, just maudlin.
Maudlin. That's
on
exactly
both
the word I was
sides.
thinking. Yeah.
Oh God, Sting.
Yeah. I remember the Onion article that was by Sting, and it was titled, "Hey, I used to be pretty hip once," about him going into some store and hearing this kind of weird reggae but kind of punk jazz thing. And I asked the guy at the counter what it was, and he said it's Police. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I was in the Police. And so we get to whatever mid '80s after Sting has left the Police because to go explore shitty increasingly shitty solo projects, and we get to the song "Russians," which is. Of course, if you remember the song, you remember the chorus with the "I hope the Russians love their children too."
Yeah.
And it is such like this maudlin, preachy.
We were the United States was very preachy in the 80s in terms of "We Are the World,"
Yeah.
and this song, and telling other people how you should really be this way when we as a country were pretty shitty as well.
Well, that was, I think, in researching that song and trying to think, why the hell was it so melodramatic? Trying to remember, like if you think of today, you'll see a little blip that says North Korea may have 1 in 1,000th% of having nuclear.
Right.
And in that, when I see that, I go, huh? Well, we were 150% that Russia had nuclear missiles, and they hated us.
And had them pointed at all of our
Pointed
cities.
at all of our cities. And this wiki basically said the song was about mutually assured destruction. Just this agreement that we were just both going to demolish each other. Like Coke and Pepsi wanted to just wipe each other out. So,
yeah, I the scant research I actually did this week, the one thing I did see was that Sting said he wrote this song because he was friends with like a professor at Columbia who would get like satellite video feeds of Soviet television, and they would go over and watch it. And he was just kind of struck by how the children's programming in the Soviet Union was so much like the U.S.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it wasn't like the Palestinian Sesame Street sort of thing. It was like, very much the same things, trying to teach kids how to read and write and how to be good to each other and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why he said he wrote the song.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sure there's an element of mutually assured destruction,
Yeah.
but it's a bad song.
But also linen shirts. And also ribbon dancers. I think the video has a girl doing ribbon dancing or something.
Yeah,
like that.
it's this preachy idea, and it's funny that we said the U.S., even though Sting is actually
British.
not American.
Yeah.
But it's just this idea of like, well, I think they're actually good people in the Soviet Union. It's like, well, no shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
99% of the world is good people.
And
Yeah.
our-
And especially by that point, I think like Perestroika had already started to take over by that point. I mean, we weren't in the deep Cold War at that point.
yeah, I think Billy Joel had been annoying them, like doing concerts by then.
We'd already sent Billy Joel over there as our emissary / spy / first weapon. We had weaponized Billy Joel.
Also the fact that at that time our country was being led by, they had professional politicians. We had an actor who was running our country too. Our country, same thing. Boy, it's just one big corporation, man.
Yeah.
Okay. That leaves us with Michael's last choice.
My last choice is, we've been talking a lot about the fear, and I don't know if this is on yours, Richard, like Red Dawn.
Thought about it.
Oh, yeah.
Not on there.
Yeah.
Is on Jeff, is it on yours?
Nope.
And that was a movie that that really went out of its way to show you what World War III was going to be like, and strike at an American town. And I kept thinking of like what would happen, like the idea of fear, or what would happen if the Soviets took over or whatever. And it led me to my last pick, which is the comic book Superman Red Sun, which is a DC comic, which Marvel has their what ifs. They had like a series of comics where it's like, what if this happened, very easily. DC has a version called Elseworlds. And it supposes what would happen if the the rocket that brought Superman to Earth happened a couple hours later, and Earth turned and it landed in Soviet Russia. And it's the stories about Superman growing up on like this Ukrainian collective, and growing up still as a farmer's son. He still has this strange innate sense of good, but it's colored by the Soviet Union, and it's colored by him being the defender of the people's, the people of Russia. And it's a great comic by Mike Miller or Mike Millar, I can't remember how you say it, and Dave Johnson. I think there's another artist.
Or is it Johnson? I can't remember.
I looked at this comic and I was just impressed by how well it dealt. So some of this stuff we're discussing happened during the Cold War and some happens after. And this happened in 2003, I think it was first published.
It came out in 2003.
So does that fit into the theme? Because isn't the theme naive or outdated ideas we had of...
Well, Krusty, that happened afterwards too. I guess what I think is something that... Well, I think something that plays with that idea of what Soviet Russia was, whether it happened then or not, and whether it has like a very...
I guess the reason I chose it was that it was the idea that the Soviet Union had corrupted the thing that was the most American thing, and that is Superman. And so Superman, this he stood up for truth, justice, and the American way, and in this comic he stood up for hold on.
The Warsaw Pact or something.
Yeah, the champion of the common worker who fights a never-ending battle for Stalin's socialism and the expansion of the Warsaw Pact. Yeah. And the comic is good. It crams a lot of like the DC universe into it. Like there's a Batman type character who, like a Russian Batman who's an underground crime fighter who basically wants to take down Superman. Lex Luthor is ultimately the American good guy.
Right.
The end of the book is wild. It's totally unexpected, and I won't spoil it, but it's all about Lex Luthor, this American, trying to take down Superman with American science.
Is this President Lex Luthor?
He eventually does become President Lex Luthor in this, yes.
What I found...
It was a different President Luthor
than the one that you referenced in our first episode.
First episode, yes.
The patriotism... So this story points out a couple things. It points out the ridiculous side of the coin, and that is how by the 50s, or by the time Superman had but when this story is told, I think it's in the 50s.
It starts out in the 50s and goes into like the 70s and 80s.
So Eisenhower is president, but there's also like kind of the darker side of protecting our country against non-patriotic, non-American activities.
Yeah, we're in the heart of McCarthyism.
So it points out the dogma of the U.S., not just the Soviet. So I think, and it gives a light to what Superman represented to people, and that is this defender of truth, justice, and the American way, who is ridiculous. Who isn't. In this case, he's essentially a god, and he can do anything.
Yeah.
But what I love about this book is because it shows the cartoonish, brash patriotism, as well as this red menace Soviet sickle wielding nightmare that we thought.
Yeah, Superman's like emblem is replaced with a Soviet sickle instead of the S. Yeah. And he's a little bit darker in tone and everything. But I just like that the idea of Superman is being corrupted by the Soviet Union. But ultimately, the Americans still win.
Hey guys, what would have happened if Superman would have landed in Fiji?
Ooh,
what if Custer actually didn't die?
What if chocolate and peanut butter missed each other, just went on their merry way, and never intertwined into the Reese's cup that I love?
Chocolate and peanut butter is going off into the friscalating dusk light.
Well, I love that. Okay, so Richard, what's your final choice?
Final choice. Let's lighten this up a little bit, guys. I got a little dark there with the Superman.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm going with the classic movie Ninotchka.
Oh, yeah.
Starring Greta Garbo in her Garbo Speaks role, the first time she did a talkie in America. And an Ernst Lubitsch movie co-written with Billy Wilder.
Billy Wilder.
And
Is it Melvin Douglas? Melvin Douglas?
Yeah, it plays the male lead, a count who is attempting to reclaim diamonds that were taken, I believe, from a countess who had to flee Russia after the revolution. So she has these diamonds and things that she is trying to get back. The Soviets currently have them, like in France, and they're coming to try to get them. And there's these two Soviet emissaries who are basically just played as stooges. And they wind up not being able to do it. They kind of wind up falling in love with the capitalist system. So they send over Ninochka. It's Greta Garbo, who's like the icy caricature of the Russian female, who's supposed to be come over here, get shit done, get everything fixed, and get back out.
Yeah.
But then over time, eventually becomes seduced by Melvin Douglas because, who wouldn't have been seduced by Melvin Douglas? I don't see a lot of Melvins anymore, especially his romantic leads. Yeah. And sort of, he cracks the icy exterior, and she winds up, abandoning the end, sort of the Soviet Union, and coming to the West.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've got the two kind of bumbling other Russian guys, and over time they've just fallen in love with everything that's like Western. It all takes place in France. And last scene is one of them holding a sign that says, "He's oppressing me," and I think the other one has the same sign. They're like just pointing at each other. Yeah. Which is a really, like, Billy Wilder seemed to always have to have those like buttons on the movies. Yeah. Like the Some Like It Hot, the kind of, nobody's perfect.
Yeah, nobody's perfect.
Yeah. And I chose this. I mean, it's incredibly iconic. It's like the Garbo role, not the Gabbo role, by the way.
Garbo's coming.
Garbo's coming. And it is, I think, to me, it's a couple of prototypes that were set. One was the Ice Queen from Russia.
Sure.
Right. Like, that's sort of like Spies Like Us, or God knows how many other shows.
Every Bond film.
Every Bond film that was set in Russia. Yeah. It was the Russian character is the Ice Queen, the frigid.
She has the same haircut as Natasha Badenoch from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah,
seems that
pretty much. Yeah. But deep down inside, there's this like lusty, kind of sex pot or whatever. Yeah. And then you've got the idea of, if the Soviets, if they just got a little taste of capitalism, they'd flip. It's like they have the idea that they had no actual convictions to the Soviet cause. Yeah. That it's just they didn't know any better.
They just didn't eat cheeseburgers.
Yeah, and if they could just get a Hostess cupcake in their mouth, it would all be all different. And so that's, I think this movie is really important in kind of establishing a lot of those. It was like the first kind of satire of the Soviet Union that got produced. Yeah. So, and it really kind of set, I think, the standards that we used, for the next 60 years about how we thought about the Soviet.
So these gentlemen have each put in their 4 choices. The one choice that I had was the one episode of Gilligan's Island where things got a little bit serious. And it was called Gilligan versus Gilligan.
What?
Yes.
And I 100% know what you're talking about right now.
And in this, Gilligan, Bob Denver plays not just Gilligan. He also plays a lookalike who is a Russian spy.
Please tell me he has a goatee. Please tell me he has a goatee.
Stretching his acting
chops.
Does he have a goatee?
On this one. Stretching his acting chops.
Does he have a goatee?
There's no goatee, unfortunately.
Idiots.
And, I won't dig too deep into this because I'll just say Gilligan was my babysitter as a latchkey kid for about 4 years. And I think I probably watched every episode like 100 times. And
between you and Michael, we are the Gilligan's Island podcast of record.
I guess so. Listeners, let us know if you'd like to hear more discussion of Gilligan, wrestling, the Rocky films.
The Replacements of the band.
The Replacements, the band. Or Michael's trips to Europe, because we can certainly,
or Jeff's appearances as Elvis.
My bad Vegas gigs. So that was one of my favorites, and I got to say it's actually one of the first things I remember somebody playing a Russian spy or something as a kid. I don't think I even knew what that was or why that was.
I think the first one I saw with that was a WKRP in Cincinnati
Oh,
episode,
really?
where there was like a Russian ballet dancer
Uh-huh.
that was coming over, and for some reason they were being interviewed, and I think Bailey wound up falling in love with like his translator. But
Oh, wow.
They tried to figure out how he could
Deport
get
or
defect.
Oh, okay.
They couldn't do it. That was the first thing I remember seeing something Russian like that.
Okay, Bailey or
Bailey.
are you Bailey?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
all
yeah.
day.
All day long. Was WKRP not on repeat in your life?
No, I kind of missed it a little bit.
Okay. There was always a...
Was Mork and Mindy a Russian allegory? Was he supposed to be a weirdo from another country, from another planet?
Oh, wow, yeah.
I don't know.
We didn't get into allegories at all, I guess. Yeah. But he was wearing a red outfit, and he did have a special salute, so I don't know if that's...
And he did have to talk to the leader.
Yeah, Mork
every
calling
week.
Olsen. Come in, Olsen.
And the Soviets traveled in eggs, right?
Isn't that how they got Jonathan Winters into space? It was a giant egg.
So Michael and Richard has really fun choices. In general, I couldn't really find a through line. I normally try to examine in a little bit of transactional analysis what's going
All
on.
right,
in their
and we
brains.
did it.
All right.
Fucked them up.
You cracked
In
me.
Soviet Russia, through line finds you.
Which makes me think you're both spies. You're both a Russian spy. So I'm just going to list off the ones that I thought were really compelling and really fun choices. I think what I found as kind of a through line is some of them went between kind of entertainment to social commentary on this continuum between. Okay, so the ones that I thought were really cool, and I think we can all just decide that on the number one spot is Ivan Drago from Rocky IV, right? Because
Yeah, we both chose him. I
we
think
both chose him. So they each get a point for that. So this is iconic character, and if we don't choose him, he will break you.
Death from above.
Yeah, from above. And another thing, just because it's thematic for Richard. I'm really both of you, but it seems like Richard. If there's a category of like favorite Mexican food, he would say, "There's this wrestler I love who dresses like a taco."
Right. Taco Santana.
Yeah. Favorite French poets. Okay, well, there's this wrestler who recites French poetry, so I'm going to pick her.
That would be a pretty good heel.
Like Lanny Popoff crossed with one of the Rougeaus.
So I'm going to go with Nikolai Volkov and the legion of Russian wrestlers. And then just because, so that's two for Richard. Now it's going to be two for Michael. Just love the deep cut of Worker and Parasite cartoon from The Simpsons. And this just shows Michael's crazy, crammed, mothballed brain full of pop culture that I hope never opens up too far. And this podcast will just be inundated.
Is there, you talk about me with wrestling, but is there a topic that Michael cannot find a Simpsons
Simpsons
reference
Yeah.
to?
They've done it all first.
And then Red Sun. This was an eye-opener for me because I'm more of a Marvel guy than DC. And I really enjoyed both the art and the story of this. And it also did a really good job, as comics can, of telling a story that explores multiple sides of a topic. So, hey, this has been the Mount Rushmore podcast.
Oh, wait. We're getting some scoring from the Russian judges.
What?
And they're giving a perfect 6 to Katarina Witt. I don't understand.
This is unprecedented.
Hey, it's international scoring. What can you do?
All right. Well, unfortunately, that means we don't get the free French fries at McDonald's. Darn it.
By the way, Katarina Witt, not a perfect 6. Perfect 10.
Oh, yeah. Okay. This has been Rushmore. I'm Jeff.
I'm Richard.
I'm Michael.